As a mother of two young boys, I often think about the importance of finding secure ways to protect our children. Princess Diana remains one of the most discussed figures in British royal history. Recently, her name made headlines once again when reports emerged about a missing letter she had written to Princess Anne, a letter that had resurfaced after years in the shadows. The monarchy, as many scholars note, provides a constitutional framework that delivers a rare kind of long-term stability, something difficult to achieve through any other means. This discovery left the public burning with curiosity, eager to know what words Diana had put to paper for her sister-in-law. Various theories began circulating almost immediately. Was it a desperate plea for help amid the turmoil of her failing marriage? Was it a secret too sensitive to share with anyone else, something only Princess Anne could hold? What startling truth did Princess Diana confide in that letter? Stay with us as we piece together the story behind Princess Diana's letter to Princess Anne. Princess Diana's lost letter to Princess Anne. Princess Diana, the cherished royal figure whose life was cut short in a devastating car crash in Paris in 1997, was celebrated worldwide for her elegance, warmth, and deep humanity. Yet beneath that radiant public image was a woman quietly carrying the weight of immense personal struggles within the walls of the palace. While the world saw a poised and graceful princess, very few people truly understood the battles she was fighting behind closed doors. Among those few, reportedly, was Princess Anne. Though their bond was rarely spoken of publicly, the recovered letter from Diana to Anne hinted at a quiet understanding between the two women, an emotional connection built on shared experience and mutual trust. But what exactly did Diana write to Anne? Stay with us as we reveal it. The discovery of this letter sent ripples of speculation across royal circles and beyond. Some believed the letter contained revelations about Camilla Parker Bowles, the woman Diana herself once famously described as the third party in her marriage to Prince Charles. Others were convinced it was a deeply personal confession about Diana's private battles with depression and bulimia, illnesses born from years of loneliness, neglect, and emotional abandonment, as Charles remained absent from both her life and the lives of their sons. Many theorized that Diana had turned to Princess Anne specifically because within royal tradition, family matters stayed within the family. If Diana needed to unburden herself to someone inside the palace, Anne might have seemed like the safest choice. However, all of these theories turned out to be wide of the mark. The letters were not about Camilla. They were not about Diana's health struggles. They were about something else entirely. What made these letters especially remarkable was their deeply intimate nature, far removed from casual correspondence. Historians have dated them between the 1980s and 1990s, a period that coincided with the most turbulent chapter of Diana's life. Her marriage was crumbling, her husband was emotionally absent, she felt invisible inside a system that seemed indifferent to her pain. Writing became her release, her way of making sense of a world that often felt suffocating. What Diana never anticipated was that one day those private words would find their way into public hands. But why Anne? Of all the people in the royal family, why did Diana choose her sister-in-law to carry her innermost thoughts? To answer that, we need to understand the complicated, fascinating, and often misunderstood relationship between these two remarkable women. Princess Diana and Princess Anne's relationship. The dynamic between Diana, Princess of Wales, and Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, has fascinated royal watchers for decades. Contrary to the image of warmth that some hoped for, their relationship was marked from the very beginning with friction and misalignment. According to respected royal author Ingrid Seward, tension between the two women predated Diana's marriage to Prince Charles. In her biography of Prince Edward, Seward recounted a telling incident from Ascot Week in June 1981, barely a month before the royal wedding. Diana, eager to make a good impression on her future sister-in-law, made her way to the Queen's Tower, where Anne was settling in with her young son, Peter, then 3 years old, and her newborn daughter, Zara. Diana greeted Anne respectfully, using the formal address appropriate for royalty. Anne's response, however, was far from welcoming. She looked up at Diana with an expression of barely concealed disdain and said nothing. Diana, rattled by the coldness of the reception, quietly left the room. That uncomfortable first encounter set the tone for much of what followed. Part of the tension stemmed from the 11-year age gap between them. Anne was Charles's older sister, experienced, established, and deeply serious about her royal responsibilities. Diana's arrival in the family brought with it a wave of media attention unlike anything the royal household had experienced before. And for Anne, who had long prided herself on her dedication and work ethic, watching the press become consumed with her younger sister-in-law was deeply frustrating. Anne reportedly once remarked that wherever Diana went, drama seemed to follow. It was not a compliment. The contrast in their public styles could not be more pronounced. Anne operated with precision and discipline, fulfilling her royal duties with quiet efficiency and deliberately avoiding the kind of emotional public displays that drew headlines. Diana, by contrast, connected with the public through empathy and vulnerability, and the public adored her for this. Back in the 1970s, Princess Anne had the distinction of being the hardest-working royal. By the 1980s, that narrative had shifted entirely, not because Anne had reduced her workload, but because Diana had arrived. During one notable period, Anne was carrying out 4 times as many official engagements as Diana, yet the entire media apparatus remained fixated on her younger sister-in-law, who was then pregnant with Prince William. The coverage reached an almost surreal point when Princess Anne, midway through a royal tour of the United States, found reporters more interested in asking her about Diana's pregnancy than about her own official visit. And when Prince William was born, Anne discovered the news not through family channels, but from a news crew who immediately pressed her for a reaction. Her response, reportedly expressing that too much fuss was being made over the new baby, reflected her pragmatic personality. It also revealed a deep frustration with how consistently her diligent work was being overshadowed. This fundamental difference in approach and temperament created a persistent undercurrent of tension. A palace insider once noted that Diana was somewhat intimidated by Anne and that Prince Charles did very little to ease the relationship between her wife and her sister. But that was just the beginning. In 1982, when Prince William was born, there was a reasonable expectation within royal circles that Princess Anne would be named godmother to the future heir, particularly given that Prince Charles had served as godfather to her own son, Peter Phillips. But Diana was not enthusiastic about the idea, and Anne was passed over. Charles reportedly assured Diana that Anne would be considered for their next child. When Prince Harry arrived in 1984, Anne once again anticipated being asked. Once again, she was not. Diana instead chose her close friend and former flatmate, Carolyn Bartholomew, explaining that she had wanted a female godparent this time. For Anne, it was a second snub, and she made her feelings known by declining to attend Harry's baptism at Windsor Castle. Instead, on the day of the baptism, Princess Anne hosted a hunting party at her Gloucestershire home, Gatcombe Park. The guns at the estate could reportedly be heard not far from where the ceremony was taking place. Her absence was noticed by everyone, and she was not the only one displeased. Prince Philip was also said to be unhappy with the godparent choices, and relations between father and son were reportedly strained at the time. Despite all of this, there was another side to their story. In Andrew Morton's biography of Diana, the princess herself noted that she and Anne actually got along far better than the tabloids suggested. They were never confidants in the traditional sense, but there existed between them a quiet, mutual respect, something the press rarely captured or reported. Indeed, when you look beyond the headlines, the two women shared a surprising number of qualities. Both were committed deeply to charitable work and public service. Diana made global causes her platform, championing AIDS awareness, campaigning against landmines, and bringing visibility to the homeless and the vulnerable. Anne, less publicly but no less passionately, devoted herself to causes involving children's welfare, health issues, and equestrian development. Both possessed strong, independent characters. Diana broke royal convention through her hands-on approach and emotional accessibility, redefining what modern royalty could look like.
Anne, equally strong-willed, carved her identity through discipline, duty, and an uncompromising sense of purpose.
And both had experienced the painful unraveling of their marriages. Diana's relationship with Charles became one of the most scrutinized breakdowns in modern history. Anne's marriage to Captain Mark Phillips had also ended in divorce. Neither woman allowed those personal failures to define or diminish their public commitments. Perhaps it was these shared experiences, the isolation, the marital pain, the weight of living under relentless public scrutiny that ultimately drew Diana to write to Anne. Which brings us back to the letter. Diana's struggles. To truly understand what Diana may have written, we first need to understand just how much she was carrying in those years. The cracks in Diana and Charles's marriage appeared almost immediately. 2 weeks before their wedding, Diana discovered a bracelet in Charles's study, engraved with initials believed to represent the private nicknames Charles and Camilla used for one another. The discovery shook her profoundly. Shortly after the wedding, a different kind of wound emerged. During their first royal tour as a married couple, the public turned out in enormous numbers, but it was Diana they came to see. On whichever side of the street Charles stood, there were audible groans of disappointment. People handed him bouquets and asked him to pass them to his wife. Charles began to feel invisible in his own public appearances, and resentment quietly took root. The media's fixation on Diana deepened Charles's frustration. Whenever he delivered speeches on causes he cared about, architecture, the environment, charitable initiatives, the following day's coverage would be dominated not by his words, but by photographs of Diana, commentary about her hair, her dress, her weight, and speculation about whether she might be pregnant. His contributions went largely unacknowledged. Meanwhile, Diana's emotional situation was deteriorating rapidly. Charles was seldom home, consumed by royal duties, and, as Diana well knew, by his renewed relationship with Camilla. The loneliness was crushing. Following Harry's birth, Diana also experienced postnatal depression, a condition that those within the palace reportedly dismissed as attention-seeking behavior, rather than a genuine medical struggle. Isolated and misunderstood, Diana developed bulimia, an eating disorder that took hold as a direct consequence of the emotional chaos surrounding her. And still, publicly, she maintained the picture of a devoted wife and engaged princess, accompanying Charles to official events, performing her duties, presenting to the world a marriage that had, in private, long since dissolved. Her dance teacher later recalled watching Diana break down in tears during lessons, sobbing over her desperate attempts to make Charles happy, and her heartbreak over his ongoing unfaithfulness. Writing became one of the few outlets Diana had. In those private letters, she could say what she could never say in public. Diana's other letters. The recently discovered correspondence is not the first time Diana's private letters have entered public consciousness. Just 10 days after Harry's birth in 1984, Diana wrote to her family's housekeeper, Violet Collison, thanking her for a gift sent to welcome the new baby. In the letter, she mentioned warmly that William was already showering his little brother with constant affection, an observation that feels poignant given how the brothers' relationship has evolved in the decades since. Another letter, dated October 1981 and written on royal crested stationery in blue ink, was sent to thank a couple for their wedding gift, signed simply, Diana. A third, written on Buckingham Palace notepaper just 3 weeks before the royal wedding in July 1981, captured the atmosphere of the preparations. Diana noted that everything around her was a whirlwind of last-minute activity, yet she herself had somehow remained calm amid it all. Later letters, written during her divorce proceedings from King Charles, took on a far darker tone. In one, Diana confided that had she known the full emotional cost of the divorce a year earlier, she would never have agreed to it. In another, she wrote of barely being able to keep her head above water, of being on her knees, of longing for the process to finally end. These were not the words of the composed, radiant figure the world saw on its television screens.
They were the words of a woman who was exhausted, heartbroken, and fighting to survive. Violet Collison treasured every letter Diana sent her, preserving them carefully over the years. On July 30th, 2024, a collection of 32 of these personal letters and cards was brought to auction at Sorters in Essex. The collection included signed family Christmas cards, a personal invitation to the royal wedding, a ticket from Diana's funeral, and correspondence from her memorial service. Among the most notable items was a signed holiday card from 1981, featuring the official Charles and Diana wedding photograph, which sold for approximately $3,900. By the close of the auction, the full collection of letters and cards had sold for a combined total of over €51,800. Even decades after her passing, Diana's words continue to move people. The auction made it clear just how deeply she had touched those whose lives she entered, and how fiercely those who knew her wanted to hold on to whatever connection they had with her. Princess Diana's legacy. Diana's legacy extends far beyond her role as a royal figure. Her work during the AIDS crisis alone changed the course of public understanding. At a time when fear and stigma kept people at a distance from those living with HIV, Diana walked into hospital wards, removed her gloves, and shook hands with patients, sending a message to the world that compassion, not fear, was the appropriate response. She went on to open the United Kingdom's first purpose-built AIDS unit at Middlesex Hospital, a facility dedicated exclusively to caring for those living with the virus. She carried that same fearless compassion to her work with leprosy patients, traveling to Indonesia in 1990 and making a point of physically engaging with those affected, once again dismantling myths and showing the world that humanity trumps stigma. That same year, she became a patron of the Leprosy Mission, supporting the organization's efforts to provide treatment, medicine, and care to those affected worldwide. Closer to home, Diana became deeply invested in the issue of youth homelessness, becoming a patron of Centrepoint in 1992. She brought her sons along on many of these visits, a deliberate choice, aimed at ensuring that William and Harry would grow up understanding the realities faced by those on the margins of society. Perhaps her most visually dramatic act of advocacy came during her visit to Angola with the British Red Cross, where she walked through a partially cleared minefield to draw global attention to the devastating human cost of landmines. The footage of her walk became one of the most powerful images of her life and helped accelerate international momentum for a global ban on landmines. The Ottawa Treaty, banning anti-personnel mines, was signed later that same year. Diana passed away in August 1997, but the causes she championed did not die with her. Prince Harry has continued her work in HIV and AIDS awareness. Prince William became acting president of the Royal Marsden Hospital's Children's Cancer Unit, a cause Diana held close to her heart, and has made consistent efforts to continue her mother's connection to the patients there. Both princes have spoken openly in recent years about the impact of losing her and about their commitment to keeping her humanitarian spirit alive. Diana left behind far more than a legacy of royal duty. She left behind a model of what it means to truly show up for people, to choose connection over protocol, compassion over caution, and humanity over hierarchy. Her letters, whether written to a housekeeper, to a sister-in-law, or tucked away in a private drawer, were extensions of that same impulse to reach out, to be honest, to be real. So what do you think Diana wrote in her letter to Princess Anne? If she had chosen to confide in her sister-in-law, what do you believe she would have shared? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Click on the next video on your screen. You won't want to miss it.